what were the biggest news stories of 2011? Well, the World Almanac has just released its top 10 news stories of the year. Joining me now is the Almanac's senior editor, Sarah Jensen. Sarah, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
How did you guys come up with this list?
Well, every year the World Almanac's editors are covering the entire world. So everything from sports and pop culture to everything that's going on in the news. And then we get together at the end of the year, we have a big debate, and we decide what was the most important thing that happened.
Do you guys vote, or I mean, how do you come up with a list?
It's a big discussion, really. It's not, a up and down vote, but we're always looking at the top 10. So we have to get it down to just 10, and that's a little bit of an effort.
I bet that's hard. All right, well, which one surprised you? Because there were a couple of stories that aren't here for me.
Well, it's always interesting to try to get it down to 10, and I think that every year we end up with about 20 that we would love to get in, and we sort of collapse a lot so that we make sure that we get in all of the essentials.
When you say that, does that mean that there's always a certain number of entertainment stories, economy stories, business stories? How do you do it?
Well, there are always subjects that we're going to be covering. Politics is never not somewhere on the list. It's just a matter of where we're focusing in politics. In 2012, it was a lot about the debt, the deficit, a lot about the 2012 elections coming up, and also about, what Congress is doing and, frankly, what it's not.
Well, it's a long list.
Yes.
Both sides of that. No Steve Jobs. I was surprised about that, the passing of the head of Apple.
It definitely came into the debate, and certainly it was a very public morning. A lot of people were definitely talking about it and working it in there. But we decided that ultimately, by itself, it wasn't going to be a standalone news topic for 2011.
All right. Well, let's get to the list, because I think everybody wants to know. Number one, the Arab Spring.
Yes, the Arab Spring uprisings beginning from the very beginning of 2011 in Tunisia, the turnover in Egypt, and then still, through the summer, everything that happened in Libya, including the death of Gaddafi. All of this is linked back to that very beginning of the Arab Spring in January.
The Japan nuclear disaster. Now, that took a lot of airtime, got a lot of attention.
Absolutely, and that began with a huge natural disaster, but it really got a lot of nations rethinking their nuclear policy, the United States and other countries included.
Osama bin Laden killed by a Navy team. Big headlines. We covered the heck out of this story. It's your number three.
Absolutely. The death of Osama bin Laden, who's been public enemy number one since even before September 11th, was a huge news story this year.
U.S. troop pullout in Afghanistan and Iraq.
It's something that we're definitely going to remember about 2011. We're also looking to what's going to happen in these governments in 2012.
One of the stories that we've covered a lot, and it's funny, you're the World Almanac, right? So I understand why you have it on the list, but we constantly fight to get this on air because we think it's so important, and that's the European debt crisis, because it really does mean something to people here in the States.
Absolutely. It's not a sexy story. It's not easy to understand always, but definitely austerity was the name of the game for the EU in 2011, and it's going to continue to be discussed in 2012.
I was surprised to see the economy way down at number 6, because to me that was problem number one, and jobs so closely connected. Americans are so distressed over the jobs market.
We're definitely struggling to find a good place on the list. Obviously, the economy was a huge topic of conversation. I think that what it came down to was how much there was to say about it, how many different areas of life it was touching, particularly in the States. You had the government in Minnesota shut down for 3 weeks this summer. You had all of the debate happening in Wisconsin State Capitol in February. These, economic issues are definitely hitting home for everyone.
Right, and you don't have to be in one of those states to feel the impact of the economy, that's for sure. Extreme weather, everybody pays attention to that story.
Weather stories are always somewhere to be found, and this year it was really difficult to choose just one, but it was a record-setting year for tornadoes, a record-setting year, unfortunately, for deaths from tornadoes, and then the wildfires, particularly in Texas, but also in the Southwest. Huge story in 2011.
We cannot stop paying attention to the 2012 election in 2011. It's on your list, too, at number 8.
It's true. We start paying attention basically at the beginning of the year before, don't we? And, the first decisions are coming up next week, so we'll keep looking at it.
And the royal wedding. Now, I loved this story. It could have gotten more attention than it did. I thought it was undercovered.
Well, the royal wedding was really fun. It was also, over 1 billion people watched this, whether they were watching it later on their computers or got up really early in the morning to watch it in the States. It was definitely a lot of fun, and it really is one of the more fun stories on our list this year.
And gay rights.
And gay rights. The biggest things that happened this year, obviously, were the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then the legalization of same-sex marriage in New York State. That's another 20 million million people who now have access to that right. It's definitely something that's going to continue to come up in 2012, especially as we look at the elections.
All right. Well, Sarah, thanks for bringing this list to us. Great stuff. A lot of fun. Maybe next year you'll give us a vote, too, so we can have a say.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back.